for in the past. Okay, recording progress. So and sustainable futures, we've been really invested in the past 10 to 5 years, I would say, and really keen on helping organizations to realize that they really need to go through this transformation as well.
Okay,
so after this, yeah, go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, to today's topic. So we were actually gifted this phrase, change the way you change, by a senior leader in a client organization who was struggling with a change initiative and was introduced to us by one of her design team. And we talked her through and she said, change the way you change. You mean do change differently? And this kind of was a few years ago, and we thought that's nice and interesting, and kind of it sowed a seed. And this year we've decided we're going to kind of own it. So today we'd like to talk about design, I guess, in a space where it's not so traditionally understood. So we want to talk about design as an enabler of organizational change. And Luis introduced the kinds of change or transformations that we feel like we can be particularly useful for. But just to tee up that is kind of why we want to talk a little bit about why design in any way, what's the problem, why would you reach for a different solution? And just to say, this is kind of on the back of experience of being kind of reached for as a solution when other attempts have failed. You know, we have numerous examples of organizations that have come our way and said, well, we've been trying to do this digital thing and it hasn't worked, or we've been trying to address this staff issue and we're still struggling with it. So we kind of know we're not the first port of call, we're not the most obvious solution, and often it's a kind of a, you know, another last resort I don't really want to use, but kind of sometimes feels a bit like that. Definitely for a client, for an organization, feels like they're taking some risk. But you know, we would all love the change to be faster, smoother, less risky, and better. Most people wouldn't say that's their experience in their organization. So just to draw on a couple of kind of summary data points to say, you know, maybe where are the clues for why design? So it's a very big number. 70% of change management programs fail. And then the interesting thing here is, you know, why, and the authors of this report say it's around employee acceptance of change. So if a change has been undertaken, the employees of the organization don't see it as relevant or have some reason to resist it, then that's a cause of failure. So this is in some ways to introduce one of the ways of change that people reach to before they might ever come to design, which is more traditional management methods for change, which in this example don't always succeed. We don't want to say that they're useless or that they're not valuable, but there are some issues. And then the second kind of change or method for change is sort of technology first or tech-driven change. So a lot of transformations will just say, well, the technology exists, we're going to implement it, we're going to put it in place. You see these big programs with big spends. And again, a kind of slightly shocking number that only 21% of companies feel like they're getting the value that they were investing in this change for. So they're not getting to the place that they were hoping to get to from their technology programs. And again, the why in this case is around lack of customer focus, so putting in some kind of change and that customer focus non-existing, or if it does, it increases the chance of change. So my kind of very simple high-level takeaway from this is in both cases, you have human factors being the cause of failure or the cause of suboptimal kind of change programs. So you know where we're going here, but we see these two methods. So management, which focuses on the business value of change, we're looking at efficiency, effectiveness, cost reduction, growth kind of metrics. And to be a little bit simplistic, but it's a kind of, we are managing a change from A to B. Whereas on technology, on the other side, you're looking at operational value, you're looking at putting in things like scale or automation or access to customers. So our case is that these aren't irrelevant methods, but they're two of a third. There's a third leg to the stool, which is design. And just to pick up a little bit more on that, we said these are human factors that are being understood as the kind of barriers to success. I don't know if anyone knows Dan Hill and his book Dark Matter and Trojan Horses. He talks about, you know, the dark matter of change. And I'm going to hand over to Caroline, because we feel like we're able to sort of unpack that dark matter. It's not just a mystery. It is these human factors, and we can start to see what different types, groupings there are and how we might address them. So over to Caroline.
Yeah. So, and that sounds very, very expensive, that we understand dark matter and we know how to do that. So that is also not what we're saying. We're saying, hey, we think we have some ideas on how to work with this, and this is at least how some researchers have defined what you as designers can do with your skills to tackle some of this dark matter. And for them, I think this breakdown of dark matter is really nice, right? So what are the things that are keeping change from happening, or what is stuff that you need to address in a program, and what is something also you as a designer can address through your strengths? And one of them is power structure. So I think as designers we are blessed with a skill set that helps us work with power structures, but also work against them sometimes and challenge them. So I think that's one of the things that we are aware of and that we can use to enable change. The other one is working with or changing a culture and a mindset. And the same, and maybe more concretely, is working with changing behaviors and changing people's environment so they act differently. So those are things that we know how to design against, right? And then the last one is how to change networks or change relationships of people. And I think that this is something that in many design projects is implicit in what we do, but I think this is what we mean when we tackle change, right? So when we tackle change, it means that we are aware that we are making change or challenging or working with the existing organization to enable change. So I think that it helps to look at it from this perspective. And then maybe if you could go to the next slide. So then what are these design qualities that we can put against this, right? So how do we do this? And then maybe in the next one. So for us, and this is again credits to Nienke and Thomas for this, but what we say is I think through integrating perspectives and beliefs, that's one of the core fundamental qualities of design. That is something that is at the heart of what we all do, and that it helps tackle these shaping. And we'll get into more elaborately on all of these and show some examples. But our ability to shape, and as service designers especially, you sometimes forget through all your frameworks and your blueprints and your journeys that the actual act of shaping, making something, is a superpower that can change the world around you a little bit. Reframing, well, I don't think I need to elaborate more on that because we have beautiful examples on that. And orchestrating, so working with people as a way of change, I think is well, another one of our qualities that we might not be so aware of. So yeah, let's go. Yeah, so this is where it gets fun, right? Because this is where we can talk about the work we're doing and about the work we're super proud of. And this is one of mine. So this is a case about the Dutch Ministry of Finance and the scandal that happened there through the child benefits. Yeah, it's called a scandal, and it's because it was highly political and very visible, and it was horrible. So 50,000 people were damaged through our tax office. If you don't live in the Netherlands, you might not have heard from this. And we were asked to be at the heart of the recovery operation and make sure that the recovery operation for this was human-centric. And for that, one of the biggest things that needed to happen was to integrate the perspective of these people who were harmed and the reality of the ministry and the tax office and the laws that they needed to abide to. So bringing together those perspectives and making sure that there's solution space to work in and that they are understood, and working from the shared understanding, I think, is integration. And that is so how we came to this. So you can click on the next one and then a beautiful button shows up. So I think what we try to do there, and this was really hard, right? So this is where we felt dark matter fighting us every day. But I think what we try to achieve there is a holistic solution that fitted within the power structures and the laws that we have in this country, but also that made room for the needs of the parents, and that made the recovery operation actually help people recover from this. So I think this is one of the examples where the integration of perspectives is super important, and more in a general sense. So that this is about, well, I think one of the superpowers of designers is that they can really show somebody else's perspective and make it understandable. We have all of our empathy tools we use for this, but also I think it's not just the customer's perspective, but it's also that of the organization and that of everything else you need to take into account. And bringing together all of those perspectives is, I think, when design is at its best. So that's this one for you.
All right, so Shape, I would like to bring a story from, wait a second, sorry, Ben. Can you go to the next one really fast, and then I'll come back to this one, please.
You're on mute, Ben.
Right, so we're just going to let Luis deal with something in the background there. So we move on to Reframe. So this is a story I really love. It's from the Livework team in Oslo when they were working with a municipality. And like many places, at least in Europe, they were dealing with having a small number of their citizens cost them a lot of money. Let's say they were paying for people's housing, for their children's benefit, for their unemployment. So they saw these people as, you know, I guess the term in the UK is in the welfare trap or something like that, and they really wanted to do better for these people, and also they were carrying quite a significant cost, which they absolutely love to reduce. A very stuck problem that I guess required, in this case, a reframing in order to find a new way out of it. So my colleague John, one day, I think after having talked to a lot of these citizens and understanding that they too were stuck, they too wanted to kind of move on with their lives. They didn't like the idea that they were in this situation. And he saw the opportunity in them. You know, he said, I want to help these people. And he went to the government colleagues and he said, what if we saw these people as investment opportunities? What if we invested in their futures? We put significant amounts of money in, knowing or kind of betting on a return on, you know, if we spend tens of thousands of euros, that will come back to us. The initial response he got was, that don't be outrageous. We're not bankers, we're government public servants. We don't think like that. Don't bring that language into this place. So the reframing, you know, I guess in terms of power structures or cultures is challenging. But I think after a couple of weeks, they didn't have anything else as a solution. They came back and they said, well, what would that look like? And it looked like a process of bringing individuals in and working out a solution for them, a budget for them, and then this, just to kind of play the project forward, we worked with a small number of people to get to a point where we could prove the return on this investment. So radically different approach to welfare that saves money and improves people's lives. So just to our topic, that ability to sort of say what if, to see something through another lens, to be creative about how you approach something, to really unlock sticky problems. That's where the concept of reframing really comes in to the picture here.
I'm back, Ben.
Okay, so Luis,
almost had a catastrophe here with my 3-year-old daughter, so I'm sorry about that.
No problem.
That's the benefit and also the dark part of working from home. So okay, let me talk about the project that we did with the health operator here in Brazil. We did multiple projects with them, and one of the projects we would like to explore how we could shift the relationship people had with their providers. Instead of thinking about sickness, thinking about being healthy. And what would it mean for the organization itself to change this mindset and to realign their services around this? And I would actually say that probably from the out of the 4 qualities that we are going to talk about today, the shape quality is, in my opinion, kind of like the most obvious around design, right? We actually try to move things forward and get to a solution, to visualize what we are going to do. But specifically when we're talking about organizations, when we're talking about strategies, when we're talking about services, even people that are arriving right now to the world of services and service design might find it a bit unexpected, but those of us who are working with this, we already know the tools and everything that we have available to help people visualize the change that's about to happen, and to talk about it and have good discussions, proper discussions to find the next solutions. So in this case, that's exactly what we did. And we, of course, went very beyond use screens, which actually help us to tangibilize what the future will look like. But it's not enough. At some points, we need to be more on earlier stages of these discussions, right? Okay, where do we want to go, and what do we have to do in order to get there? So if you go to the next slide, Ben. So there's plenty of our work that is around shaping the solutions and visualizing them, and using metaphors to do that. So in this version here, in this specific project, we used a couple of circles with inner circles that showed when people were healthy and when people were not healthy, and when would they access the service and for what, and etc. And the metaphor of this, how do you say that in English? Like the chemistry table with the elements, yeah. So yeah, to show everything that they had to do in different areas in order to make the change happen. So using this kind of artifacts, those metaphors that help us to tell a story about the change that's about to happen and why it's important, I would say is one of the main qualities, and has always been one of the main qualities of design, of the design approach and the approach for change. Because in order for people to change, they must know exactly where they're going, right? What they want to become. So this inherent tangibility, I think it's our main added value, and it helps us to talk about something that might happen way into the future. Yeah, it's you, Artur.
Yeah, and then we go on to orchestration, and for that I would like to share some of the work we're doing right now. So right now we're working for 7 Dutch prisons, in which we are designing solutions, but also our program is built to make an organization change, right? So the innovation is a means to help the organization build the ability to change. So as Ben said, most change initiatives fail because employees are reluctant to adopt change. And I think that this is exactly what this program is focused on. So we're working in prisons. That is exactly as scary as it sounds. And we work with the prisoners and with the people working there to make their workday and their life there better. And that can be anything. It can be solutions varying from how teams collaborate together to how we can set up a department there that actually shares responsibility for cleaning and eating and things like that. So we're really redesigning the prison bottom up, but through orchestration, so through designing with people, putting them together in a room, offering the ability to work together, but also doing this bottom up and top down in a sense. So we're also doing this innovation building with the C-level of the organization and of a prison. So we're building a change system there, and design is a means there. It's not the goal. So they don't want beautifully designed tools or solutions. They want solutions, but mostly they want to be able to adopt solutions. And this is super hard. And this is stuff that we're also venturing in new territory, I think, some of the time, right? So some of the time we're like, oh, but now the dark matter does this. All of a sudden we weren't expecting this, and also you see that if you rely on your powers as a designer and you start shaping and you start integrating and you start sharing these perspectives among each other and you start making something together, there is room to change, and there is enthusiasm to adopt change, and people see the value, and then they take a step with you. And this is how this program is set up. And I think that it's super exciting. I think it is also the next, well, maybe our next step in design, to use design in such a way and on such a scale to help these organizations, and they're massive organizations, right? So to become more flexible and to adopt change that will inevitably be necessary to make this a better organization. So, and in general, this is in prisons, which is an exceptional place to do this, I think, but in every organization, this is true, right? We've all know that after a co-creation session, people are more willing to work together than after a negotiation. We know that the concreteness of our solutions help people align on change that needs to happen, on some strategic goal, because we can make it visible or we can make it feelable. It helps people align on that. So I think orchestration is something we never talk about. We never sell it, right? We never say, oh, we're going to orchestrate your organization. But also it is actually what designers are great at and what we always do in a project. So this is, I think, our most underestimated superpower, but my favorite one. Yeah.
Great. Thank you both. So just to close the loop and add design as the third leg of the stool, and to kind of make the case that we are bringing that human value, which from my mind is, why organizations exist in the first place. They're to create some kind of value through collective effort and expertise, and that, we, to summarize, that tangible vision, that alignment or orchestration of people and perspectives, and sometimes when necessary, reframing and unlocking stuck problems. And we think this can work closely with other methods of change. Obviously, often works alongside technology and helps to guide technology or to prioritize which technologies are right, make sure that technology investments are not misplaced, but also alongside the kind of more traditional management techniques, which are also important because there are lots of specific things that we don't know how to do that need to be put in place along the way. So ideally, we can see a kind of three-legged stool here. So Luis, over to you just to talk a little bit more about change and changing.
Yes, so I think when we were writing, because this webinar came from an article, and when we were writing this article, we were talking about change as being something often much more complex than specific projects, right? So when we talk about service design projects, for instance, we have a specific goal, and it might be really complex, but it's still kind of, we can design our way through a very linear process, right? So, and what I've seen, I've been in this community for a long time now, and what I've seen is that most agencies and professionals, they approach service design and change as a linear thing, but I don't think we don't think it's an adequate approach to design-led change, because if we think about this industrial logic, we have an opportunity, something that someone wants to address, and then we go about designing it and trying to find the proper solutions for this problem, let's say. And once we have specified the solution, we have the whole implementation. And when we are talking about, in this case, the bottle, we have the manufacturing, the molds that have to be made, and etc. And once this is ready, we start actually delivering, manufacturing it and selling it, and kind of like the job is done, right? But when we talk about services, and if you go to the next slide, Ben, please, we and organizations as a whole, everything is connected, and change is not that it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen all at once in the sense of the implementation, because change is happening all over the place, right? So when we talk about a common customer life cycle, let's say we have many things that might be changing at the same time on the in places that customers can see, our citizens, if we're talking about the government, and things that people actually don't see but are quite relevant for the service itself, for the solution itself. So if you go to the next one, Ben, we can have a new concept store launching. We have maybe a new offer, a new product offer, a new service that we are launching. We have training going on. We have a product that might be discontinued. We may be changing a provider, and etc. So there are many things that may be happening at the same time. Since those things are happening at the same time, it's really hard to go about this process in a linear way. We have to approach change, and so we can go to the next one. So that's the idea that a change is never done. It's a commitment that we have to make. We set a vision, and we have to pursue this constantly. It's a continuous, it's a never-ending process. So as if we want to take a design-led approach, we should target having this design-led approach in a non-linear way. We should aim to be in constant contact with all the changes that are happening within the organization, and measuring it and making adjustments and etc. So as it's an imperative for organizations to pursue innovation, to pursue right now sustainable solutions, etc., they must be able to do this in a way that they keep moving forward, but at the same time they are they have this understanding of all the complexity of all the changes that are happening at the same time. And in this space, we think that design may be quite relevant. A design-led approach might be quite relevant because of the qualities that we just shared.
So just to give a final example on that, and also can't resist, because this is a change program in the oldest parliament that we worked on a year. You finished a year ago. Well, we finished working on, but the headline from the project, which was about upgrading the back office of the UK Parliament to be, you know, a modern digital workplace that lives up to the expectations of the people who work there. And those people obviously are quite powerful people. Definitely, there's some politics going on there. But the win for us was they thought, okay, well, we need a digital transformation. That will be a 5-year program. It will take us from A to B, then we're done. And I think what we installed in them over the period was that they would never be done, but maybe they could stop transforming earlier. So after 3 years, we left them with the capability that Luis is just talking about. You know, they know how they run things, they know how they change things, they know how they prioritize things, and they know how they do that in a way that is integrating voices, shaping the future, reframing challenges that come up, and orchestrating. So they're doing that in a designerly way, which is, I think, where we're hoping to get to with the prisms, for example. And everywhere we go, it's not just that we've delivered a new state, but you've increased the capacity for change as well. So thank you all for listening. I think the easiest thing is if we have a look in the chat and answer some questions, because otherwise it gets to be chaos.
I was going through them. So some questions, very practical questions. I'll say it again. We'll provide the recording. Everyone that signed up for this will share an email. We send an email with the recording, with the deck, etc. Okay. And thank you for everyone joining. Let me see the questions here. So there's a gentleman called Joe Trainer here. How do you align design-led change with tech change and management consultancy change? Who wants to get this one?
So, I mean, just to expand on the Parliament work, we had those three elements aligned. In that case, the change management role became clearly about working with people to do the things that needed, the legal bits. That there was a lot of people change, a lot of role change that came with changing things. So their brief came from the way that we defined Parliament wanting to work. So that was very important that that kind of operational change was delivered. And then on the technology side, I mean, that this was where the problem was there, that they were investing in technology in a kind of ungoverned way. So it was about giving them away. And what we did in this case was actually show where the technology is supporting the services and activities of the support organization. So and a method for choosing which technology change to prioritize. I hope.
Caroline, would you like to add something to that? You're on mute.
That doesn't help. So yes, so maybe what I would like to add to that is, because the question was, how does it relate to traditional change methods, right? That was I think Joe's question, and I think part of our solution is to work with those as well. So I think what our strength is in many of these operations is to start the change and to start figuring out what the directions are. But also we are not doing implementation a lot, because that's not where our strength is. That's also where our skills don't really shine. But where traditional change methods, if you've started the change properly, are great to take off of from that point, or technology wise, if we start the technology properly and we do great research and we figure out what the technology should look like, then the traditional process of building that technology and developing it further is fine. It's just that we need to do the starting bit first, and the starting bit is not a month, but that's a really long time also, right? It's before we know for sure what the solution is. That's what I call starting. So that might be the whole development of something. But I do think that we really need to leverage on the other strengths of the other change methods as well, because otherwise we are not great at bringing change all the way to the end. We need the other skills and the skill sets for that as well, I think.
For sure. And that I don't think it ever was our idea to do it all by ourselves. So one of the main qualities, I would say, of design is also collaborating and getting people on board and integrating many different perspectives. Thank you, Caroline. So we have a question from Madrid. Hola. It's about the orchestration topic. How do you set goals and make promises to align everyone? In which phase of project management?
Yeah. And this is so okay, this is going to be one of those nuanced answers that aren't, well, so the answer is there isn't one answer to this, right? So I do think that for a change as big as, for example, the prison project, we don't have one set of goals for everyone, and we don't talk to everyone about the same goals. So in every organization and in every team, we recalibrate the goals we have, we recalibrate what we're going to do, why we're doing it, and overarching, we have goals that are quite broad, so they always kind of fit underneath those, and there's not a phase in the project management. You do this, and you do this constantly, so you can recalibrate this constantly, and that is a big part of the orchestration, that you reset your goals and you figure out what you need to be doing. And so I think that is my not so straightforward answer to this one, but I think that is the whole game of doing orchestration well.
If I may add, I think we might make promises when we talk about setting goals in different moments of an engagement. And as I stated, I would rather have those engagements as a continuous thing than based on projects. So we can jump from project to project, understanding the big picture and following how the impact is being generated from the previous project. So that's what we should aim for as change makers within the design space. And in terms of promises, it's when we talk about open-ended challenges, whenever we aim to do something that is not a copy of something else that's already out there, it's really hard to actually set a target on an impact measure. Let's say we may have past stories to tell where we can share what happened when we decided to, let's say, increase the average ticket or reduce the waiting time for something, and etc. So I think we are pretty much based on the stories we have to tell beforehand when we are starting a project, and trying to grasp what are the main challenges and the main objectives within this change process, or in a particular part of this big change process, right? And then as the project starts developing, we start oftentimes realizing that there are other organizational objectives, or that what users, customers, or citizens value are specific aspects of the solution that we were not foreseeing it in the beginning of the project. So we start trying to connect those dots and trying to come up with goals and metrics that connect the experience with the operations and the business or the organizational goals, main goals, let's say. So just to wrap it up, I would say that the job is to continuously align and review and make sure that we are measuring the right things and tracking this and if the impact is actually happening or not, right? It's not in a specific part of the project management that this happens. It changes its form somehow. All right, so there's another question here. What is your typical duration of engagement with organizations to implement changes, considering that challenges may arise over time and certain changes require a longer duration? Additionally, how do you provide long-term support to organizations and maintain ongoing connections?
I can get that, Luis. So I think feels like the line blurs between the change activity and then the capacity, the capability ongoing. So we have, I would say that anything significant is a year or 2 years. It's on the years metric, but we worked with one large multinational organization over 6 or 7 years. But I think at some point we got them to a place where they were in that constant changing using design mode, and we were quite a small part of their team, just keeping on with the support.
Okay, I'll move to the next one that probably Caroline might be able to answer. So how do you view introducing design-led change in the Dutch government, since these organizations are typically not designed to embrace change? What would you start with? Super interested to hear any thoughts. Asking as a designer in the Dutch government. Thank you, Darcy.
Yeah, thank you, Darcy. So this is by far my favorite topic to talk about in the whole world. So I'll keep it short. But yeah, so I think any government is not renowned for its flexibility or its modernity or any desire to change. Yet also, especially the Dutch government, is in a very problematic place right now, and they know it. So that's a great entrance for design, so that we actually have something that works and that can help them get going again. So I think that's an entrance. So that's why we start where problems are huge and not where things are like a little bit of problem, because when their problems are huge, people are willing to try something new, and a lot of things have failed before already. So that's an entrance. And also, we don't always call it design, and I'm not sure that I should say that out loud. But so in the child's benefits scandal, we were not hired because we were designers. We were hired because we understood we could integrate perspectives. That was why they wanted us, right? So we could talk to these people and we could help them be heard and be understood, and that we brought with us this strange way of working that was design, and that we made all these requirements to the way of working together with them. That came second. And I think so that's also a recommendation, that you don't always have to talk about design to be a designer, but also you have to make room to be able to do what you do best. So it's balancing that, I think. Yeah.
Great. So I have another one. I'll try to go through them all. So my dear friend Bruna Chianca, hola. How do you compare the maturity between the different countries, companies you work for to contract designers to do change management? Do your clients consider a design studio in first place to do it? Maybe I can start answering and give it the word to you, Ben. But I would say, from what I've seen in this past the time that I've been around, I would say that much more than a country-specific maturity level, there's a company-specific maturity level change, let's say, sometimes sector-specific. We don't tend to compare this in the beginning of a session. So or in the beginning of a project, it's something that happens as we move along. Okay, in the first conversations, we understand a bit about their structure, their challenges, etc., and this gives us an idea of how things work there and their maturity around change, around design, innovation, and so different topics that are around our practice, right? And then as we go about the project, we start discovering new things. So I would say it's not really our intention to actually compare the maturity between different organizations. We want to help those organizations probably move forward in terms of increasing their maturity levels, to be better equipped to innovate, to be better to customers or citizens, and etc. So the assessment is important, but it's not the comparison per se.
Yeah, I just add, I quite like the sort of using the adoption curve for things like this, and I would say there are quite a lot of early adopters, right? I would say, maybe people in the Dutch government, that there are certain people who have either have such a pressing need they've had to look for another option, or they're a little bit more maverick and they're bringing something new in. And then you do see sometimes an organization which has gone into that kind of, there's more of a early majority of people who see and value design in this context. And I don't have any kind of country. I don't think it's particularly at that level. I think it's about people within organizations. So we did a huge amount of work in Thailand for a couple of years with a very early adopter company. That would be my answer. Move on, Luis. What's the next one?
Yes. Let me find here. So Olga is asking, do you use behavioral experiments to evaluate your change management approaches with small groups of people before orchestrating change across the whole company? If yes, could you give an example?
So just from the Parliament work, I mean, it answers an earlier question. We engaged everyone. It's not a huge number of people in the organization, but they all fed into the integrating perspectives activity as employees at the beginning, because the biggest barrier there was about employee acceptance. And from all of the input that they gave, we identified, in this case, we used the sort of vicious cycles model from systems thinking. So it's kind of behavioral, because it's more about how groups are behaving. So they were stuck in certain cycles of activity, and we were very overt about these things and made sure that there was agreement that these were the problems they were facing. So that would, I think, answer that question.
Great. We have 2 more questions. I think we have time for them. So Tim, hey Tim, thanks for this great stuff. I often use orchestration to encompass it all. The whole service design approach sounds like this talk is focused on the ability to change, being enabled in the orgs continually. I love this framing. Of course, collaboration is key. The question, is there a favorite format of output or an early step you often use to ensure a long enough timeline to keep changing? Similar to the question on deck. No, sorry.
Well, similar, but also slightly different, I think. So this is what do you do early on to make sure that that is the target of the project or the program you're starting, right? And I think, so what we're getting better at is to start not by saying, okay, this is your problem, but hey, this is your system. And these are points of entry that we think are likely to enable change. And I think by framing it like that, saying, hey, this is the entirety of your system or of how we understand it today, and these are things that we think are likely to enable change, let's start with those. Places your whatever you start doing next in this bigger frame of what you're hoping to achieve and how big that challenge actually is. So starting not with deep research on what the problem is, but more on what the system is, I think is one of the big steps you can take in the beginning. So you start off at a different point, but maybe that's you guys have another perspective on that.
No, it's great. It's a great answer.
Yeah, let's go to the last question then. Daniel Furtado, I've already spoken to some UX designers from large companies, and they talked about the fact that they have little contact with direct user research on a daily basis due to bureaucracy and deadlines. How service design can adapt to these companies' time without losing the essence of in-depth interaction and research with the stakeholders?
So just so I understand, so in large companies, UX designers don't have the time anymore to talk to real people, to real customers, because of the pressure of their work. That is the question. And then how do we reinstate that, I think is...
and I would say that what Danielle is saying is that this is due to the lack of stretched deadlines, let's say. So the work is kind of continuously with small short sprints, so it makes it difficult for them probably to get really into the research phase.
I'd say your organization is using a technology-led change methodology, which is shipping stuff is driving the agenda. So the design space is being squeezed, and almost to acknowledge that, right? You don't, and maybe push back on that, because otherwise you're just going to feel marginalized in some way. And there's been a really interesting discussion on the internet recently about this kind of, design getting squeezed out, or design feeling like it has to prove itself constantly, even if you already have. So let's kind of watch out for that. One hack, though, maybe, because we had a big bank client that wouldn't let us anywhere near their customers because they were far too important and wealthy. And we looked at the pains of the people within the organization, because they seem to be quite important too. So maybe you can solve the problem for some users closer at hand.
Yes.
But it is worrying that this is UX designers, right? Because this is, I think, one of the why they're there. So this is, if this is a trend, that is worrying. Yeah.
And there are many ways of doing research, I would say. So if you are if you are not being able to find time to actually do research, you can maybe use a prototype instance to actually get some information about the customer, right? So instead of just doing the research, you can show them something around your questions, around your hypotheses, and then get the information through those devices, let's say, through those artifacts, which is aligned with the tangibility of design as well. Okay, I think we are ready to go. Ben, Caroline, any last words?
No, just to say thanks again, everybody, for taking the time. I really appreciate it. Hope it's been worthwhile.
Yes. So,
Thanks, everyone.
Caroline?
Yeah,
Yes.
nothing to add. Thank you all.
Okay, so everyone, thank you for joining. We'll send a satisfaction survey with the video link and the article or the decks, etc. Okay, see you soon. This is only the first webinar from many to come.